Hello and merry meet. I'm Lady Tehila from the Coven of the Open Mind, and you're watching Sabbats 101. Hail and welcome. Well, spooky day is here. It's Samhain, you can see behind me. It's time to honor our beloved dead. The beauty of the aging mother goddess is waning. There's decay in the air and sadness and loss and grief. And it fills our hearts and minds, while fear often fills our hearts, fear of the unknown, fear of the impending winter, and it weighs heavy in our souls as we approach the third harvest. In Wicca, however, we remember our loved ones and rejoice because we know that their memories are always with us and that they live on in memory. And that at this time of year, when the veil is thin, we can hear them and see them on the other side. We can feel their presence in our lives as if they never left this world, and without the need to disturb their eternal slumber. So remember that the only time when spirits are disturbed by the workings of the living is when they are summoned into creation, when they're made manifest and given enough energy and investment from someone living that they can come to resemble life themselves and interact with the physical world. This is not at all how they portray it in Hollywood most of the time, that spirits need help crossing over. In reality, it's the living people that experience the memories of those who have passed on who need help, and that it's difficult sometimes for those who are living to come to terms with the nature of a person's loss. Death is timeless and formless, so you'll remember that from our Metaphysics series, or go check it out. But not so the people who remember that spirit, those who experience the energy of a space and see the memory of that spirit's life. If the death was unjust or cruel or extreme in some way, then it can be very hard to feel at peace with it. The emotional investment can become negative in that case. It can be one of fear or hurt. It can be one of sadness, and even empathy, even emotions of strong love can manifest death into the world. But it's when those emotions are negative that the manifestation of death can be more twisted and can take on a more sinister form, and it can turn into a haunting. When that happens, it may be necessary for a medium or a witch or some kind of psychic to come, show up, commune with that spirit, understand the circumstances of that spirit's death, understand why the hallucinations and whoever is seeing the apparition, whoever's hearing that apparition, whatever experiences that living people are having as a result of that memory. They need to understand the nature of it, understand why people feel that way, and help them let go of the feelings that they have to it, help them detach from those negative feelings. So do not pity the dead, pity the living, because the living are the ones who have to move on and carry on, no matter what the circumstances were surrounding a person's loss. A person, when they are dead, they are slumbering beyond the veil, they are at peace, or they are reincarnated into life in some new form, and they are not suffering anymore. They are free of suffering. It is those who remain behind without them who need your pity. That's why graveyards are some of the most peaceful places on earth, where nature is left to its devices, because there life can thrive where humans dare not tread. Remember that summoning a spirit to commune with them or to bind them for magic in order to use that spirit's wisdom or knowledge for divination or for any magical purpose, that can have an adverse effect on the living incarnation of that person, of the soul that you're borrowing. So death is timeless, right? Death is a timeless, formless energy that exists everywhere and is an oscillation with life. And that's why when a person passes on, they may feel like they've experienced eons and eons are passing, and then when they're back in their body, it's like 30 seconds has gone by in case of a near-death experience. Or if a person reincarnates, that happens right away, faster than time. They can reincarnate in the past. Oh, ladybug. It's ladybug season. They can reincarnate in the past. They can reincarnate in the future. They can reincarnate into multiple bodies at the same time, because only in life do the rules of time apply. Death is not really a place. It's not really somewhere you go. It's a transcendent experience. There are metaphors that describe places: the Summerland, the other world, hell, the afterlife, limbo, the underworld. There are the river Styx. There are various aspects of astral space that living people can use as a metaphor to experience the timeless, formless nature of death in a way that makes sense to them as a living being. But that is not an experience to the dead. And that's why when you come back from a near-death experience, when you come back into life, reborn, you don't remember the time in between lives. You remember your past lives, but not the time in between. And that's because it's very difficult to make sense of that experience in any way that resembles living your life. There isn't a real timeline outside of our macroscopic experience of physical reality. So remember that from our metaphysics, or go watch it. But if someone has reincarnated, and you're summoning one of their past lives, their soul is bound to that life. It's still a part of them in a way, right? Because the soul is timeless. And if that is the case, then it's likely that they will know that their soul is being summoned. It's likely that they'll be exhausted, or they'll feel sick or under the weather, and they'll feel off or unwell. And they could feel drained or exhausted or depressed. And that is the real foundation of the secular holiday of Halloween, right? So on Halloween, you're meant to put on a costume and pray that the spirits overlook you. You're meant to eat lots of candy and lots of sugar to keep your energy up and to just survive because everyone is summoning spirits of the dead and working with their loved ones on the same day. And that actually kind of keeps the order in a way, because at least if someone's working with your energy, you're going to be ready for it and you're going to know that it's coming, and everyone is going to be doing the same things that you are. People will go to graveyards in order to honor the dead, or to feel close to them, or commune with them, or to just use that as a source of death energy for their magic or their divination. People will also pay homage to and honor the dead. People will also walk through labyrinths. Labyrinths are things that are said to resemble the journey of life. It resembles the winding and oftentimes confusing nature of living in this world, and you get lost in it, and you often feel like you don't have a destination, or you don't know where you're going. And that's what it's like to be in a labyrinth. So that's where the idea of the corn mazes comes from. When you enter the labyrinth, usually you'll bring some kind of candle or light with you to resemble the guiding light of your loved ones and the nature of memory to help guide your feet through the labyrinth of life. Remember that you never have to bow your head. You never have to walk alone through the labyrinth of life. And that is the lesson of Samhain. In Wiccan mythology, it's said that the goddess dwells in the underworld with her god, the consort. They are united once again, this time in death as it was in life. The goddess once again becomes pregnant by the god, this time as the Lord of Shadows, and she prepares to give birth to the god once more into this world, the physical world, on Yule, and when the cycle begins again. So for that reason, this is often considered to be the end of the year. It's the start of the dead days, so it's a period of time where magic is considered to be weaker, or performing magic may have unintended consequences. If some people believe that magic won't be effective at all, some people will believe that your magic will be co-opted by chaos magicians and used for nefarious purposes. Some people just don't feel up to it. They just feel a little bit depressed, seasonal depression. They just feel like it's a time for reflection. It's a time for introspection. And it's not a time to be trying new things or starting new things at all. It's a time for endings. And then at some point, it just kind of switches and feels like a beginning, sometime between Samhain and Yule. Either way, however you look at it, initiations are traditionally done on Samhain because of the theme of transformation, the presence of the cauldron as the center point of the altar, Ceridwen's mythology. This is a day of transformation. It is a day to transform yourself in the feminine waters of the cauldron, to bathe in transformation. And it suits initiation very well for that purpose. The idea of shifting your own energy so that you can start anew. Plans are made to seek self-improvements. Resolutions begin forming. People are introspecting. But it's also a time for sadness and reflection. It's not a time for beginnings. And eventually, as the season wears on, that sense turns into hope, and people begin to think about beginnings and putting their resolutions into practice. And that's when we come back full circle to Yule. Ritual usually occurs at midnight, the witching hour. It's on Halloween, so I don't know if you consider midnight on the 31st. It's on the 1st, right, at midnight. That's how they do it. The festivities usually begin earlier on the 31st, and then they culminate in a late night ritual, followed by a feast. Some people will do dumb suppers. A dumb supper is when you sit and eat a meal with the dead, right? The dead are said to be with you, so you're not speaking, and that allows you to commune with them more strongly and to have hallucinations of them and to see them with your mind's eye and hear them with your mind's ears, and it just helps you feel more close to them than otherwise you might feel. Some people will do dumb rituals where people don't speak at all, and there's no speech involved. And some people will have an audience with Ceridwen or a similar goddess as a part of the ritual, and then you don't speak unless you're doing the challenge that is necessary to ensure you're ready to face the goddess, and then speaking with the goddess in a private audience. Others will not eat a dumb supper before the feast. I personally don't. Some people fast instead. They don't eat all day, or they don't eat for a couple days beforehand, because afflicting the self is one way to feel closer to death, to allow death into yourself. And hunger also helps to fuel the ritual mindset, and it also helps to bring about visions of the dead, and that is what should occur during a successful ritual to the dead. Either way, ritual is usually somber. People are often given time to approach the altar of the dead alone, or spend time with their loved ones, or honor them, often silently. Sometimes there's drumming or chanting that goes on while this occurs. Death is not treated like some scary concept in Wicca. It's more like an old friend. It's someone who greets you on occasion from a distance and who takes you when you're ready. A mercy more than something to fear. Remember that rituals that involve the dead, or descending into the underworld, or anything like this, drain life energy. They are exhausting. After the ritual is done, you never look back. You look ahead, you walk away confidently, and you are not afraid. You are training yourself to shift your focus away from where you were to where you're going. If you look back, the dead may follow you. They may continue to haunt you. That is a popular trope in a lot of TV shows that is based in reality. And you would have to do an exorcism or cleanse that spirit if it causes distress or it latches on in a way that's not healthy. Many will use a bell for this purpose. That's the most common use of the bell. They'll train themselves to move on mentally when they hear that bell and focus on life anew and forget all memory of what just happened and just go, move on, eat, feast, ground. And then when you're done doing those things, you can then talk about the ritual and think about it and dwell upon the experiences that you had and anything you learned from them. Other tools commonly used at Samhain are Ouija boards. These should be used in circle. These should be used in a shield, a hard shield. Grounding is a must afterwards. Treat it like any ritual to the dead. Be respectful of whoever shows up to speak with you. It is not a toy. It is not a game. Yes, you may be drunk when you're doing it. That's fine. Alcohol lowers inhibitions. It makes it easier to have a ritual mindset, a ritual trance. Just be careful and remember it's not a game and to be respectful. Many will use mugwort in order to help bring about more intense visions of the dead. Be careful using mugwort. Do not use it if you're pregnant or on SSRIs. But mugwort is an herb that can bring about visions of the dead and help you have a more intense experience, especially if you smoke it as opposed to just drinking it in a tea, which is more common when you're using it for dreaming. And malign is another common one. Any death-aligned herb, there are a few, but do be careful because a lot of death-aligned herbs bring death, right? A lot of them are baneful. Mugwort is one of the few that is not going to harm you. It'll help you have a very intense experience and then wear off pretty quickly so that by the time you're coming back from the underworld to the world of the living, you feel yourself again and you're ready to move on. Some people go ghost hunting. Some people seek memories to commune with. They find dead streams, abandoned buildings, anywhere haunted. For all of these experiences, never look back. For all of these experiences, train your focus to move on when it's time to return to your life. If you think you have a haunting, you should check our recent Wicca 101 series for the symptoms of that haunting, and then reach out to me at covenantoftheopenmind@gmail.com and I'll help you. I'm a medium and I am also a demonologist, so I can help you with any kind of haunting. Do not take chances with this sort of thing. Train yourself to move on. Even if you have a good relationship with the dead in general, you never know when you're going to stumble upon something that is truly upsetting to you. And that's why it's important to have good habits of grounding and centering after any working with the dead. For feast, most people eat pumpkins. Most people eat anything that's been harvested from this time of year. This is the third harvest. Some call it the soul harvest. Some call it the pumpkin harvest. So whatever you want to call it. All of our pumpkins are finally orange. I can't wait to make soup. Soups are very common. Squashy dishes, soups and pies. Apples are very common. So is apple pie or apple sauce. Soups of all kind, like soulful ones especially. So chicken noodle soup, broccoli and cheddar, chowder, anything that feels soulful to you should make its way onto your feast table. Braised meats are common. Roasts, anything that you put into a crock pot and then you cook all day. That's very common for Samhain. Anything savory, so rosemary, sage, thyme, all the cleansing herbs are common to eat at the feast, which is usually after the ritual, so that makes sense. It's one way to ground. Cooked herbs and vegetables are the most common sides. And for drinks, you're going to think about mead, that's honey wine, dark red wines, dry white wines, ales are still common, and stouts as well. Anything that is full flavor, maybe a little bit bitter and a little less sweet. That's more common for Samhain. The exception is apple cider. Hard ciders are still very common for this holiday. Apples are still very fresh from the harvest, so they're a very common side, a very common thing to use for drinks. And cinnamon is a very common spice as well, so you'll often find spiced wines or mulled mead starts to make its way onto the feast table. Clove is another popular one, as well as peppers and any kind of spice. They say that spirits enjoy spicy and really flavorful food offerings most of all, because that's the most alive you can be, is to have something very spicy or flavorful. And that's what the dead like to do. They like to experience life. They like to know that you are alive, and you like to know that in death you will be remembered fondly. So it's a happy exchange of life for death and death for life that Wiccans engage in at Samhain. On the altar, people put acorns, pine cones, dead leaves, dead flowers, and dead bouquets, and just bits of dying nature. Dead things are brought into the house for this holiday because you want that death energy in your space. Mortars and pestles are common, as well as cauldrons, and any kind of representation of transformation. Brooms are woven from materials that are lying around after the harvest. Brooms represent purification. Any kind of purifying tool is common as well this time of year. They say that if a broom is hanging by a threshold, by a front door, it gets knocked over. That's an indicator that there's an evil spirit in your house. So that's another reason why brooms are very common tools this time of year. Books and journals are also very common. They're often found on the altar or just left out around the house because everyone is introspecting and retrospecting and just looking over all their lessons from the year and learning and trying to make sense of the lessons of life and what wisdom life had to give them this year. Lanterns and candles are also common symbols, things that give us light in the dark of Samhain. So may your Samhain also be lit by the loved ones before you. Never bow your head and know that through the labyrinth of life, you never walk alone. May you find peace in death this Samhain, and from all of us here at the Coven of the Open Mind, blessed be.